I can't believe I'm up to the year 2004. This winter between 2003 and 2004, I was working with Ocean Alliance full time. And that spring, uh, Pacific Life Foundation was a big sponsor of the Voyage of the Odyssey. And they also sponsored this tennis tournament in Palm Desert. And so they invited us out. And I think we had done it the year before, but I had just come back from the Odyssey, so I didn't go. But we were their whale people. So we set up this booth at the tennis tournament, and it had this life-size inflatable whale from Scripps that you'd walk in the mouth and then you'd walk out the back end, and it had all the organs and everything inside. It was really cool. But we had this booth set up for 2 weeks, and we talked to people about whales, and we would play games with the kids. We met the most amazing kids. They were the volunteers during the tournament to get the balls and stuff like that. We would have chips and salsa for lunch every day, and Jamba Juice. That was the other thing that we would always get. And then we'd go out for Mexican every night. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It was absolutely exhausting, but it was such a good time. That was how I began my whale stuff that year. So 2004 whale watching. I mean, if you've been following along, I mentioned that 2002 was a bad year. 2004 was, I remember that it wasn't very good, but I was so surprised going through the data sheets. It's just really how few whales we saw throughout the year. We started out with Echo. Again, I feel like she's, often a whale that's back first. So we had Echo and Cygnus. And at this time, there were sometimes we'd have trips where, again, we'd have like 4 species day, couple different, animals in each species. And then other days it wasn't quite like that. Cosmos was another whale that we saw from that time. In early May, we had this great trip with Nile and Owl, who were feeding together. And look at this picture. I thought actually that it was one whale with their flippers up in the, but it's actually both whales. They're side by side lunging in the same way, because that's the left flipper of each whale that's up. I just thought that was really cool. And then things kind of got pretty quiet. We had, we were up on Jeffries quite a bit with lots and lots of fin whales. This is a cool picture. I just love this sequence, but you can look at how many diatoms and dinoflagellates are all over this whale. It's like kind of a yellowish color. And then here's another fin whale sequence. We ended up seeing so many fin whales that it inspired me to partner with Blue Ocean Society the next year and look at our identifying individual fin whales. So I'll talk about that next year. But yeah, lots of fin whales. This was a really cool day. I remember this so clearly. All the dark there is herring at the surface. Okay. And the herring, if you haven't ever heard it, it sounds like rain, almost like rain on the surface of the water when they're all up at the surface. So we were watching this fin whale feed in it, and it was amazing because the fish are all bubbling at the surface. Then all of a sudden they'd go silent, and we see this big fluke print come up. And then after like 30 seconds, they'd all start boiling at the surface again. And the whale would come up away from the school of fish, take a few breaths, but kind of turning in a circle to come back down to that one particular area and feed again. It was such a cool day. I just so distinctly remember. I was trying to get a close up of all the herring in that group. So it got a little quiet. I mean, this is June 19th and we got skunked. Couple whales. We were up on Jeffries a lot. So Wizard was out there, Pinball, Satchela. I also have to say that as I was looking through my pictures are terrible from this year. Just barely identifiable pictures of some of these whales. It was crazy. We had Appaloosa and her calf and Beanie. So this was a really crazy ID. This is Beanie, both these pictures. So Beanie got her name because of it looks like those propeller hats, right? The hat with the little thing sticking up if you look at the picture on the top. But sometimes the whale's tails lighten up or darken up within those first couple of years. And hers, this whale went from like a T2, so, more white than black, to almost entirely black. And so if you look at the trailing edge, that part on the top, those little divots at the top, you can see that it's the same whale. But remember that. I remember Beanie being around a lot that summer. Tulip. Pepper was another whale. So these guys would be around for like a day, couple days, but then they'd move off somewhere else. So it's probably just that there just was not a lot of food around that summer to keep anything around. Because interspersed throughout these days where we'd have an occasional humpback, then we'd have an occasional day where we would see a fin whale and a couple minke whales. This is what, early July. So it seems like there should be a lot more whales around. So that was kind of how the summer went. I mean, we saw it was a lot of fin whales that summer, and very few humpbacks, just kind of scattered in and out. In the fall, things picked up a little bit more, kind of like they had the last couple of falls. I remember seeing this whale pole vault, and I remember pole vault so well. It was named for this mark in the upper right of the tail that looks like the guy flying over, the high bar or whatever. And you could see the pole there too, to the left of it. But I wanted to name this whale Kansas because I thought it looked like the Wicked Witch. And so I just remember this whale had always stuck in my mind. But look how scarred up this whale is. It had been entangled in fishing gear, and it just really struck me. I think it was the year before that I saw it, and it was just really raw. So poor pole vault. We had geometry again. I just remember geometry being there every fall. We had putter, we had inchworm, a whale named Haida, and buzzard. We had branch. Another whale that we had quite often, like back in those days, was this whale Regulus. He was one of Spoon's calves, a big old whale. Eden again. Look at this terrible picture of Glowstick and Chinook. Those were a couple of the whales that were around that fall. So that was it for humpbacks. I mean, that was the sum of our year. I'm not sure anybody was seen more than, a handful of times that whole year. But there were some other species that we saw that really made the year. We had lots of basking sharks, which are always so cool to see. I mean, they're the second largest sharks. They're filter feeders. And when they feed at the surface, if you look really carefully, so the white is the inside of the shark's mouth, and you can see its gills. Its gills go all the way up almost to the top of the shark, and they're open because it's filtering plankton. We had molas. Lots of minke whales again. This one, you can barely make out this whale, but we had a beluga whale in the harbor, which was so cool. I'm pretty sure that this was the one named Poco. But this was one picture I got. You can see, I literally don't even have a picture of it above the water. I'm not even sure why. You can barely see the little beluga whale in that picture. We had Rizzos again this year, which I had forgotten about. I'm not even sure that I saw them. I think Danielle might have been working that trip. This is called a plankton worm. They're probably like an inch long. I remember getting one in the plankton tow on Jeffries at some point that summer. I happened to see it in the data sheets, and I remember it because it's the only time I've gotten it, and we pulled up the plankton that day, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? But it was a plankton worm. That's pretty cool. And then a right whale. We had a right whale. We actually saw right whales just about every year. And then we also had a couple unfortunate encounters as well. We did have a dead minke whale. And then in the fall, we actually had a dead Atlantic white-sided dolphin as well. And then I threw this in because I saw this just cool. When you're on the water and a big storm comes in and you're that far away from it, it just is so cool to get pictures of the clouds and the formations. So I put that one in there. So we also, really, we had awesome interns every year, but these guys, they stuck it out every single day, spending so much time looking and searching for whales. So much fun. We had, again, summer and fall interns that year. So just a really fun year. The most memorable part of 2004 for me was that was the year that I got married. And so obviously there are a lot of whale watch people that were involved in that. We wanted to get married too during whale watch season so that, people that I grew up with hadn't ever been whale watching. And this was something that I had loved since I was a kid. I had some of my teachers as a child were out here. And I remember one of them came up to me after we had gone on a whale watch. And she was like, it's so cool to see you out here doing this thing that you've loved since you were a little kid. So I wanted to be able to do a whale watch with everybody that was coming out. And also, of course, have whale watch people at the wedding. And so we did that. So we made it a whole event. But I was just going through some of my pictures and I had a few to share. So we did a bachelorette weekend in New Orleans, which It was all old interns. And I have to say, that's something that I'm so grateful that I've been able to have this experience where I've absolutely been able to do what I love. And I've met the most amazing people that are still some of my dearest, dearest friends today. So this is, I think of this all the time. Kim and I met in college, but she ended up working on the boat for a couple of years, and everyone else in this picture, I'm still friends with today. And they were all interns, and that was how we met. Linda did a surprise bachelorette party for me a couple days before the wedding, or maybe the night before the everything started. And again, it was mostly whale watch people that were there. It was super fun. So we did a rehearsal dinner whale watch, had an afternoon trip in October. And I have to say, I tell this story a lot because people, one of the most commonly asked questions is, do whales breach? And I always say, yep. And sometimes we see it and sometimes we don't. And so I use this example. In 2001, I had a friend of mine come out, and she was here for 3 weeks, and she saw breaching on almost every single whale watch. She was out 2 a day, except for like 2 trips. I mean, it was just, there were lots of whales around, and so there was lots of surface activity. This year, 2004, I did 120 whale watches that summer, and I saw a little bit of surface activity. Occasionally I saw tail breaching, and occasionally we would see flipper slapping. But other than that, I didn't see a single breach until my rehearsal dinner whale watch, when one whale jumped out of the water, when all of my family and friends were on the boat. And Jimmy turned to me. He was like, oh my God, it's the whales blessing you. It was so very cool. So then we went, after the whale watch, we went to the Gloucester house. My brother's band played, and these are just some fun pictures of the evening. And then obviously the next day was a wedding. So I just wanted to throw in a couple pictures to figure people get a kick out of these because they haven't seen them in so many years. I have to say, I think this is one of my all-time favorite pictures from my wedding, is this picture of Evan and Sarah dancing. So we also tried, actually couldn't find my digital pictures. I know there's a picture of everybody from the whale watch that was at the wedding, and this is kind of getting ready for it. I just couldn't find that last picture. And then we ended up, everybody moved to the crow's nest afterwards, and so we wrapped up the evening at the crow's nest with a very fun weekend. So I'm so grateful that I've met so many amazing people through the whale watch who are still such a big part of my life. So that's 2004. Stay tuned for 2005.